There's a story about a man who couldn't stand his coworker. He said the guy was arrogant, fake, and full of himself. Every meeting turned into a silent battle, a war of eye rolls and clenched jaws. One day, after months of tension, the arrogant coworker quit. And for a week, the man felt peace. Until a new hire joined, confident, outspoken, the same type. And suddenly the irritation was back. That's when it hit him. Maybe the problem wasn't them. Maybe the universe was trying to show him something he refused to see. Here's the thing, the people who trigger you the most are often mirrors. They reflect the parts of yourself you've buried, denied, or forgotten. In this video, we'll decode what Carl Jung called the mirror theory, and why the faces that disturb you most might actually be showing you who you really are. You ever notice how some people can walk into a room and immediately irritate you without saying a word? Maybe it's their tone. Maybe it's the way they seem too confident, too loud, too sure of themselves. You don't even know them, yet something inside you tightens. Here's the thing, when someone instantly triggers you, it's rarely about them. It's almost always about you. That reaction, that flash of annoyance, anger, or judgment is your subconscious trying to get your attention. It's a signal, and most people spend their whole lives ignoring it. I once watched two colleagues, both brilliant, both calm under pressure until they were put in the same meeting. Within 10 minutes, the air got tense. One rolled his eyes every time the other spoke. The other's smile started to look more like a shield. Nothing offensive was said, yet both were boiling inside. Afterward, I asked one of them what happened. He said, "I just can't stand people who act like they know everything." Interesting choice of words because, truthfully, he was known for being the smartest person in every room. The mirror had appeared, and he hated what it showed him. That's what the mind does. It hides the parts of ourselves we don't like, our insecurity, arrogance, fear, envy, and projects them onto others. When you say, "I can't stand her, she's so fake," what you might mean is, "I can't stand how fake I feel when I'm around her." It's uncomfortable to admit, but the truth often hides in discomfort. Think of it like this. Every person you meet holds up a mirror. Some reflect the parts of you that you love, your kindness, humor, intelligence. Others reflect the parts you'd rather not see, your jealousy, control, resentment, fear of being judged. When you get triggered, that mirror isn't attacking you. It's inviting you to look closer. But most people don't look. They lash out instead. They label, gossip, criticize, distance, all to avoid seeing what's inside the glass. Here's where it gets interesting. The more we deny something within ourselves, the more strongly we react to it in others. That's why the people who trigger you often have traits you secretly possess or wish you did. You hate arrogance. Maybe you've been taught to bury your own confidence. You despise laziness. Maybe you fear your own moments of weakness. You can't stand people who seek attention. Maybe you crave recognition but won't admit it. Every emotional charge is a reflection of something unhealed. Most of us were never taught to decode these reflections. We were told to control emotions, not understand them. To push through, not to pause and question why something cut so deep. And because of that, we keep bumping into the same type of people, the same arguments, the same emotional loops, different faces, same mirror. The universe is patient that way. It keeps handing you the same reflection until you finally decide to look. That's the moment most people mistake as drama or bad luck. But if you look closely, life is just trying to show you you. Your triggers aren't punishments, they're pointers. And if you can stay still long enough to study them, they'll tell you exactly where you're still at war with yourself. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." It's not philosophy, it's a survival skill for the mind. Because when you stop running from your reflection, you stop letting it control you. Carl Jung once said the mind is like an iceberg, only a small part of it is visible. The rest, the shadow, lives below the surface, shaping our emotions long before we can name them. When someone triggers you, that reaction comes from the underwater part. Let's break it down. When you see a trait in someone, arrogance, dishonesty, attention-seeking, your brain runs it through two filters. The first is your conscious judgment, the story you tell yourself about what's right or wrong. The second is your subconscious memory. Every time you've been punished, rejected, or humiliated for showing that same trait yourself. Those two collide in a split second. That collision is the trigger. Jung called this projection the act of throwing what we can't face inside ourselves onto the nearest person outside. Think of it like holding a flashlight in the dark. Whatever you point it at seems to glow, but the source of light is still in your hand. You can't see your own pride, insecurity, or fear directly, so the mind projects them outward. It's not a flaw, it's a survival mechanism. The psyche hides what it can handle until you strong enough to deal with it, and it usually tests that strength by putting someone in front of you who embodies what you've disowned. Here's a simple example. Imagine you grew up in a home where showing confidence was labeled as arrogance. You learned to shrink, to make your intelligence sound smaller so others wouldn't feel threatened. Years later, you meet someone who speaks with absolute certainty and your blood pressure rises. You call them cocky, but deep down, it's the confident part of you pounding on the door, asking to be let out. That's the mirror. It doesn't show who they are, it shows who you've refused to be. Modern psychology still circles around Jung's insight. Jordan Peterson reframed it as shadow integration, the process of acknowledging your darker impulses so they stop controlling you from the background. Brené Brown talks about it through shame, the hidden emotion that drives defensiveness and judgment. Different language, same mirror. And this isn't just emotional theory. Neuroscience backs it up. The amygdala lights up faster than logic when you sense threat or ego friction. By the time you've told yourself, I just don't like that person, your body already decided they reminded you of something unresolved in yourself. Here's the real twist. Projection doesn't only happen with negative traits, it also explains admiration. When you're drawn to someone's confidence, creativity, or calm, it's your unconscious saying, that's me too, but I've forgotten. Every crush, every hero, every person you secretly envy carries a reflection of your own potential. That's the full spectrum of the mirror. It reflects both your light and your shadow. Triggers show what you reject. Admiration shows what you've abandoned. Now, why does this matter? Because awareness changes the game. Once you recognize projection, you stop being hypnotized by people's behavior. You see the pattern behind it, how your mind turns others into screens where your hidden emotions play out. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel rage. Maybe it's not about them. Maybe it's the part of you that hates feeling powerless. Someone's success annoys you. Maybe it's the ambition you buried under fear of failure. The mirror theory doesn't ask you to like everyone. It just asks you to look inward before you react outward. Jung believed that facing these reflections was the real path to self-knowledge. Not meditation retreats, not mantras, but the everyday frictions that reveal what's still unfinished inside you. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of integrating all the pieces of yourself, even the ones you'd rather keep hidden. And that's the paradox. The more you accept your shadow, the less it controls you. The less you project it onto others, the freer your relationships become. So next time someone gets under your skin, pause. Ask, what part of me am I seeing through them? That question alone can stop the cycle of blame and begin the work of awareness. Because here's what this really means. Your greatest teachers will never arrive wrapped in kindness. They'll come disguised as the people who irritate you the most. So, now you know the mirror exists. The next step is learning how to actually see it while it's happening before you react, before you burn another bridge, before you repeat the same emotional movie. Let's start simple. You're in a conversation. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Instant surge of irritation, maybe even anger. What most people do. Blame the interrupter. What awareness does. Asks, why does this feel so personal? Maybe you grew up never being listened to. Maybe you were taught to stay quiet. When someone talks over you, your brain doesn't hear rude behavior. It hears childhood rejection. That's the mirror turning on. Step 1. Catch the pattern. The first sign you're staring into a mirror is emotional overreaction. If your heart rate spikes, if your thoughts spiral long after the moment is gone, it is not about the present person. It's an echo. Start keeping a mental note. Who consistently triggers me? Bosses? Confident people? The ones who brag? Each group tells a story about what part of yourself you're still negotiating with. Write it down if you have to. Patterns only reveal themselves when tracked. You'll start to notice it's not 10 different enemies, it's one repeated lesson with new faces. Step 2. Shift from judgment to curiosity. Most people stay stuck because they label instead of look. They say he's arrogant, she's manipulative, they're lazy. But labels are emotional anesthesia. They numb the discomfort of seeing truth. Curiosity, on the other hand, keeps you awake. Ask, what quality in them is making me react? Then ask, where does that quality live in me? Maybe you're not manipulative, but you suppress your influence. Maybe you're not lazy, but you fear rest. Mirrors distort, they don't invent. Step 3. Use philosophy as a neutral lens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." He wasn't talking about positive thinking, he meant ownership. When you dwell on someone else's flaws, you surrender mental space that could have been used to understand yourself. Nietzsche called it the abyss. When you stare too long at others' darkness, you risk becoming it. Awareness is how you hold the flashlight without blinding yourself. Step 4. Practice the 3-second mirror rule. When triggered, give yourself 3 seconds before responding. In that gap, ask one grounding question. What is this showing me about me? If the answer doesn't come immediately, good. That's the point. Silence creates reflection. Maybe you all realize the coworker as confidence just highlights how small you've been playing, or that your partner's criticism touches the exact insecurity you've avoided fixing. Those 3 seconds can save you hours of regret. Step 5. Recognize the positive mirrors. 2. We talk a lot about triggers, but mirrors also reveal our light. The people who inspire you, who make you feel alive or creative, are showing you your dormant potential. Instead of idolizing them, integrate them. When you admire someone's calm under pressure, practice stillness instead of envy. When someone's success excites you, use it as evidence that it's possible for you too. Your admiration list is a map of your unlived strengths. Step 6. Reclaim the projection. Here's what this really means. You can't control what others do, but you can reclaim what they awaken in you. That's emotional alchemy, turning reaction into realization. Every time you identify a projection, pull it back. Say it internally. That's mine. Not as blame, but as acknowledgement. It's the opposite of ego. It's ownership. And something strange happens when you do this often. People who once triggered you start losing their power. Their behavior doesn't change, your perception does. The charge dissolves because the lesson is learned. You start moving through life less like a battlefield and more like a hall of mirrors, aware, calm, watching your reflections shift and fade as you integrate them. That's what Jung meant by individuation. You become whole not by staying positive, but by meeting every disowned part of yourself until nothing's left to project. So here's the quiet truth. Healing isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it looks like sitting across from someone who irritates you and realizing they're holding your missing piece. When you can look at that reflection without flinching, the mirror no longer controls you. You control the light. When you finally start seeing the mirrors for what they are, something strange happens. The world begins to look less like a threat and more like feedback. People stop being villains or heroes. They just become information. It's disorienting at first. You realize half the arguments you ever had were never about the other person. They were about the versions of yourself you were still running from. Here's the thing. Blame is comforting. It gives your pain a direction to point. But awareness gives it a purpose. The moment you take back a projection, the emotional charge dissolves. You stop needing closure from others because you're giving it to yourself. That colleague who once felt unbearable now becomes neutral. That family member who triggered guilt now becomes a teacher you quietly thank. Owning the shadow doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It means recognizing that your reaction is yours to understand, even when their behavior is wrong. Two truths can coexist. They acted unfairly, and you were reminded of an old wound. That small distinction separates people who stay trapped in loops from those who grow through them. Real integration isn't dramatic. It happens in the smallest moments, when you feel envy and still wish someone well, when you feel criticized but listen instead of defend, when you sense anger rising and choose honesty over explosion. These are micro acts of consciousness. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, the shadow loses a little more control. You're not suppressing emotion, you're integrating it. Over time, you'll notice your emotional landscape flatten. Not in a numb way, in a steady way. You stop being tossed around by every mood because you've met the parts of you that used to hijack them. That's inner freedom, not indifference, but choice. When you change your relationship with your shadow, the world mirrors that too. Conversations soften. Conflicts shorten. Even your social media feed feels different because your attention shifts from outrage to understanding. What you see out there has always been shaped by what you hold in here. The lens clears when you clean the glass. It's humbling because you realize how much of life's drama is self-authored. But it's also empowering because if you created it, you can rewrite it. Acceptance isn't passive. It's active, seeing the courage to witness every emotion without running or clinging. It's looking at your jealousy, your fear, your pride, and saying, I know you. You can stay until you're ready to leave. That tone of inner friendship changes everything. People feel it when you walk into a room. You radiate calm not because life stopped testing you, but because you stopped fighting the lessons. Marcus Aurelius would call that mastery of perception. Jung would call it individuation. I'd call it peace with reality. So here's where we end and begin again. Every person you meet is a mirror. Some show you your brilliance, others your wounds. Together they form the full picture of who you are. The goal isn't to shatter the mirror or avoid it. It's to see clearly enough that reflection and self become the same. Because when nothing in another person can unseat your balance, you've met your real self, the one beneath the projections, beneath the stories, beneath the noise. The one who sees and simply says, ah, that's me. What you see in others is never about them alone. It's your shadow asking to be seen. When you answer it, the world stops triggering you and starts teaching you. Weeks later, that same man walked past a mirror in the office hallway. For the first time, he didn't see the face of someone frustrated or small. He saw a man who finally understood his reflection. He realized the people he hated most were never enemies, they were messengers, carrying the lessons he refused to learn. The arrogance, the noise, the attitude, it wasn't about them. It was the confidence he'd buried, the power he'd muted, the truth he'd been too afraid to own. And that's the thing, once you stop fighting the mirror, it stops fighting back. The world softens, not because people change, but because you do. So if this made you see yourself a little clearer, stay. There's a lot more your mind hasn't told you yet. Subscribe and let's keep decoding the human mind together.